Forest muted all sounds as Officer Ryan Clark pulled up to the isolated coordinates. Switching off the engine, he took in the unsettling stillness enveloping the trees. According to the report, gunfire had been heard from deep within these woods, though nothing seemed amiss now. Clark stepped out, grabbing his radio. "Dispatch. I've arrived on scene. No signs of disturbance from the road. Proceeding on foot to investigate." Static answered, the signal already weak this far out. Route plots and maps did little to prepare for the maze of indistinguishable trees in every direction. Clark studied gnarled roots and weathered bark for any sign of a path. Finally, trampled ferns pointed the way as brush grew sparser ahead, opening to a small clearing. In the center stood a metal door, half buried by fallen leaves and dirt. A massive slab of corrugated steel reinforced the front, welded securely over gun ports and a sliver of narrow window. Camouflage netting blended it into the surrounding forest. Someone had gone to great lengths to hide and fortify this bunker. Clark rapped his knuckles on the steel. "Hello. Anyone home?" No response came. He activated his radio. "Dispatch, I've located what appears to be an abandoned bunker, sending coordinates now." Recalling protocol, he spoke calmly into the receiver. "This is Officer Clark. I come in peace and mean you no harm." After a long silence, Crackling answered, "I see you out there. What do you want?" The voice lacked warmth, but didn't seem immediately threatening either. Clark chose his next words carefully. "We received a report of gunfire in the area. I'm just here to check on the welfare of any occupants and make sure everyone is safe." Another long pause followed before the voice returned weaker, as if trying to seem non-aggressive. "It's just me in here. I apologize if I alarmed anyone. It was only target practice, and I try to be careful." Training told Clark not to fully trust distant communications, especially from potentially unstable individuals. But this man didn't appear overtly dangerous either, and Clark wanted to defuse any tension. "I understand the need to keep sharp out here. Mind if I come in and have a look around? Verify all is in order myself?" Even longer dragged by before a resigned sigh sounded over the radio. "Very well. The door isn't locked. Just come alone and slowly. No sudden moves, if you please." Clark stepped closer and twisted the corroded handle. Rust protested, but it swung open heavily, creaking into an expansive lobby partially collapsed inside. A single dim bulb illuminated the shambled remains of what had once been shelves and storage, now mostly decayed. A lone figure stood against the far wall, half obscured in shadow. His features were difficult to make out past scraggly beard and untamed hair. Worn flannel and boots spoke of years disconnected from modern comforts. Hard, sunken eyes watched Clark's every calculated movement intently. It was time to assess the occupant's state of mind and clarify this situation, if possible. But first impressions often proved deceiving in his experience. For now, all Clark detected was a troubled soul in need of empathy. Clark took a slow, calming breath before speaking. "Good evening, sir. I'm Officer Ryan Clark. Might I have your name?" Silence answered as the man studied Clark warily. His lips parted, then closed again, as if reconsidering. Finally, a croaked word escaped. Clark offered a gentle nod. "It's nice to meet you, Peter. Do you live here alone?" A haunted glimpse entered Peter's eyes, looking past Clark into some distant fragment of memory. It wasn't always this way. His voice took on an edge like lingering regret. "My wife, Sarah, and daughter, Emily. They used to be here with me." Clark sensed the man's tenuous grip on reality, hanging by a thread. "What happened to your family, Peter?" Another faraway look overcame Peter as his surroundings seemed to fade. The sound of cries and screams echoed in his mind, growing louder each day as the walls closed in. It had started with small nuisances that Peter tried ignoring. Bird calls interrupting sleep, wind rattling the trees, scurrying animals in the walls. But as winter set in and snow piled high around their bunker, blocking out the outside world, every little noise amplified in the confined space. Sarah assured him it was all in his head as she cared for Emily. But Peter heard accusations in the pinging pipes, interrogations in the creaking wood. He began reinforcing steel plating to silence the listeners, adding more layers of fortification each night. Sarah pleaded with him to stop, that he was scaring their daughter. But Peter knew they weren't safe. He had to protect his family at all costs from the noises driving him mad. The echoes of phantom intruders consumed his every waking thought. Peter blinked, seeing Clark's concerned face waiting patiently for him to continue. He took a shaky breath. The storms came, cutting us off for weeks. Supplies dwindled as tensions rose with each passing day shut inside. I thought I heard. His voice cracked, unable to say the words. "It's all right," Clark assured softly. "You don't need to relive it." He studied Peter with empathy, not pity. The isolation clearly took its toll. "But you're not alone anymore. Let me help, however I can." Gratitude mixed with fresh guilt in Peter's downcast eyes. He nodded solemnly. "Thank you, officer. But there's more you need to know. Things I've done." Another haunted look came over him as he turned toward the rear of the bunker. "Follow me." Clark fell in step, cautiously behind Peter's unsteady gait. Mental instability proved unpredictable. Yet Clark sensed the man truly wished to unload his burdens, rather than cause harm. They passed collapsed hallways, leading to shadowy rooms, coming to a reinforced vault door nearly obscured by debris. Peter fumbled with an ancient key, swinging it open with a piercing squeal. Flashing his flashlight, revealed a tiny cement cell, chains bolted to the floor, and walls stained with markings Clark didn't linger on. A decomposing form lay in one corner, tableau of an horror long buried yet haunting its architect even years later. Peter's voice came small and broken. "I thought she was one of them, but it was Sarah, and oh God." Crumpled against the doorframe weeping, clutching his head in torn hands. The monsters were in here all along. For a long moment, Clark could only take it all in, fighting rising nausea. This shelter had driven its inhabitants to the brink of madness, forcing unspeakable acts. His light swept the grim furnishings once more before returning to the shattered man before him. "Come with me, Peter. It's over now." Clark spoke gently but firmly, guiding him back up the hall. Memories clearly tormented Peter, yet Clark believed no soul was beyond redemption if they sought forgiveness and change. But first, they had to escape this place, poisoning them before its ghosts claimed another victim forever. Clark led Peter away from the dreadful vault, every step feeling like escaping a horror that had held them for far too long. He steered them toward the lobby, hoping fresh air might finally dispel some of the madness, clinging in every damp corner. But as they emerged, Clark noticed the surrounding forest had grown darker, denser clouds now creeping across the sky. An ominous rumble preceded fat droplets beginning to fall, quickly intensifying into a pounding downpour. Any hopes of an immediate exit slipped away as the storm enveloped them. He scanned the narrow bunker windows, failing to pierce more than a few feet into the sheets of rain. Visibility will be near zero out there until it passes, he confirmed grimly to Peter. We're trapped for now, I'm afraid. But don't worry, I'll get us out of here as soon as it's safe to travel. A glint of paranoia re-entered Peter's eyes at this unwelcome news, pupils darting like a caged animal, calculating escape routes. His breathing quickened, and Clark knew he had to redirect the man's mind from its spiral downward. Peter, tell me more about when you first discovered this place. What drew you out here into the wilderness, all alone? Confusion battled in Peter's face before his breathing began to slow, focusing on Clark's calm tone. I was weary of the world, he began, growing frustrated by petty rules and restrictions telling him how to live. One day, after losing my job, I packed only necessities and walked, following an innate pull, deeper into the trees until coming across this clearing. The bunker seemed a gift, sturdy walls to finally shut out judgmental eyes and let me live freely. Sarah joined me not long after, seeing the promise of our dreams, realized away from city constraints. We made it our own, growing our own food, teaching Emily from nature's wonders rather than textbooks. It was simple but fulfilling, until his voice trailed off into the present blackness once more. Clark smiled gently. I understand the need to escape conformity and find peace with loved ones in nature's embrace. You created a good life here. Those early years will always stay with you. Why don't you tell me more about building up your home then? Glad for the diversion. Peter began describing upgrades like reinforcing supports, expanding gardens, collecting rainwater. His hands animatedly shaped each proud addition, and Clark could see the diligent, caring man he must have been before cracks formed in his defenses. But then, the descriptions grew darker. Tools becoming weapons, barriers instead of architectural improvements. His focus intensified, mania seeping in around stability's edges. Clark tried guiding him back whenever his deterioration showed, but Peter was losing himself to madness all over again as the storm raged, trapping them within his demon's den. The downpour outside intensified into a deluge, its constant pattering only fueling Peter's fraying nerves. His manic ramblings grew more disjointed, hands trembling as he paced circuits around the bunker's crumbling rooms. Clark knew he had to intervene before the man crossed a point of no return. Peter, listen to me. Whatever happened in the past is over, but you need to let it go for your own healing. Tell me what really drove you over the edge that last day. Unburden yourself and find peace. Peter froze, horror washing over him anew as the memory resurfaced. It was our anniversary. I'd hunted a deer to prepare her favorite meal. But when I returned, his eyes squeezed shut against the vision. God, the noises she was making. I thought she was dying. Clark spoke soothingly. Take your time. Slow your breathing. What did you find when you went inside? Through clenched teeth, Peter forced out the words. Emily was in the cell, beating Sarah, screaming it was her fault we were trapped. I tried to stop her, but she wouldn't listen, just kept saying such terrible things. Finally, Sarah went still, and Emily, she turned on me. So you defended yourself, Clark affirmed calmly. You were driven to extremes by your own daughter's actions in that moment of insanity. It's a tragic tale, but doesn't make you a monster. You were pushed past your breaking point after endless torment in this place. No, Peter cried, agony twisting his features. I killed them both. With my bare hands, I snapped their necks like twigs until they stopped moving. I'm the monster. A guttural sob racked his frame, all sanity abandoned. I must end this horror for good. Before Clark could react, Peter scrambled for the steel vault door left ajar. He meant to throw himself inside, to suffer penance for his sins in that hellish cell forever. But Clark lunged, tackling the larger man with all his might and wresting the ancient key from loose fingers. They fell in a desperate struggle, hands grasping for leverage, breath coming in ragged gasps. Finally, Clark gained the upper hand, pinning Peter's wrists as he thrashed and screamed. "It's over," Clark yelled firmly into his rein. Slicked face. "No more death will stain these walls. Do you hear me?" Peter's struggles weakened to spasms, tears mixing with the storm, spraying their skin. Finally, all energy fled his limbs like the haunting memories seeping from his pores. His reply was barely audible. "Please, just kill me. I want the ghosts to stop." Clark held the shivering man firmly. "I won't do that. You've suffered enough without adding your blood to this place's cruelty. It's time for a new beginning. Will you let me help you start over somewhere? The past can't touch you." Only sobs answered as Peter's will seemed to break entirely. Outside, thunder rolled in a cathartic chorus to carry their cries of pain into the churning storm. The downpour finally showed signs of letting up as Clark helped Peter to his feet. The man seemed smaller. Somehow, ghosts exorcised through truth's purging waters. Clark led him, limping toward faint sunlight, now piercing the fading storm. Stepping from the shelter's gloom into fresh air did wonders for Clark's psyche as well after the ordeal. But he knew Peter still faced arduous recovery ahead, away from these cursed grounds poisoning his recovery. He clicked his radio, relief washing through static at the dispatcher's reply. "Dispatch, this is Officer Clark, responding from coordinates sent earlier. I have a code 4 situation. Request immediate medical extraction and transport. Over." Static answered, as the bunker walls blocked strong reception. "We copy your signal intermittently, officer. Please relay status and location, if possible, to send assistance. Over." Clark switched off the device, knowing help remained beyond reach for now. But isolation wouldn't claim another, not while he still drew breath. He studied Peter, who gazed almost childlike into the dripping boughs, as if seeing nature's beauty with new eyes. "Does this place still call to you, after all its evils?" Clark asked gently. "Or do you feel ready for a fresh start somewhere the past holds no power?" Peter took a long, shuddering breath, then released it slowly. "This place will haunt me till my dying days. But you're right. Its crimes can't define me unless I let them. Please, help me leave its shadows behind for good. I want to live again." Clark smiled, laying a steadying hand on the man's shoulder. "Then that's exactly what we'll do once help arrives. In the meantime, let's see if we can find shelter from this rain until extraction." He scanned the clearing, spotting a gnarled fallen giant, partially hollowed by time. Soon, a small contained fire warmed them within the cramped shelter as daylight fully returned. Clark spoke of hope on the horizon, while Peter slowly regained himself, face regaining humanity with each word. By nightfall, rescue lights shone through the trees, calling them to a future untainted by past devils. Clark helped load the now sleeping Peter into the ambulance, giving a concise briefing of what he'd endured to the responding medics. But some wisdom felt too profound for clinical notes, hanging between them as the bunker retreated into darkness, its secrets laid to rest at last. He watched the vehicle departing into a new dawn, hopeful their ordeals might find understanding in a world not yet beyond redemption itself. Then, he too turned for home, buoyed by humanity's capacity to overcome even madness' deepest scars, if shown the simple power of compassion. A year passed before Clark returned to the long-abandoned bunker, having kept watch over Peter's recovery from afar. Reports told of steady progress, psych evaluations showing lessened compulsions, physical therapy regaining lost strength. Though legal proceedings found him unfit to stand trial, Peter voluntarily committed himself for treatment. Clark believed with time and support, the man could finally make peace in a world that once scorned his battles as weakness. Now, Clark meant to lay his own ghosts to rest, hiking the overgrown path to find nature overtaking the steel shelter, nearly unseen amid young saplings. He hauled open the squealing entry and shined his light within. Decay crawled every wall like ivy, crumbling fixtures fallen to mulch upon the dirt floor. Yet within the chaos bloomed new life. Mushrooms clustered between foundation stones, sustaining myriad insects. Even here, in Shadow's very heart, regeneration proved stronger than ages of torment. Clark stepped the twisting halls, watching micro-ecosystems thrive among each timber and brick laid by a troubled soul, seeking only shelter against judgment outside. Perhaps even monsters house dormant seeds of renewal, if given soil to root and sunlight to flourish beyond devils crafting their ruin. Emerging into pale daylight once more, Clark slipped the ancient key into thick underbrush and walked away, two souls finally unburdened. His radio clicked, a routine check in from the rehabilitation facility upstate. "We've got good news," the dispatcher said. Peter had a major breakthrough in therapy yesterday, willing to share his story publicly to help others. His progress is nothing short of miraculous at this point. Thought you'd like to know. Clark smiled, breathing deep the crisp forest air. "That's wonderful to hear. Please, let Peter know he has my full support and to keep up the courageous work. Some dark places can still nurture beauty if we tend their wounds with compassion." The dispatcher chuckled. "I'll be sure to pass along your message, officer. Sounds like you both found some needed healing out there after all." Clark switched off the radio, feeling lighter than before the assignment that brought him unexpectedly face to face with humanity's darkest horrors and most triumphant transformations. He stole one last glance at those ancient bunker walls, blending seamlessly into the surrounding greenery. No trace of their terrors visible to passers-by. Only Clark bore witness to the regenerative powers of sunlight and empathy's purifying rains, washing even madness into forgiveness, given time and care's nurturing hands. Then he turned for home, hopeful that, somewhere, a new dawn had come.